Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Britton's Hangout Hour, episode 68. I'm here today with Livia J. Elliot, who writes interactive fiction and also she runs a couple of podcasts as well. And you also run a YouTube channel,
Yep.
don't you?
Yeah, my podcast is also on YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, haven't you also collaborated with Jared from The Fantasy Thinker?
Yeah, I'm generally on Varsha's sci-fi masterwork circuit, in which we are reading the sci-fi masterworks in the order of publication by Golan's. So this is year 2 out of 16. I'm also on that podcast.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think weren't you one of the people who was covering Annihilation as well, or I could be wrong
No,
about
I'm
that.
not on that one. No.
Oh, okay. But you write interactive fiction. I guess
Yes.
that's a thing. This is a first for me. So how are you doing today?
All cool. And you?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been a day.
Yeah, I spent the whole morning, so it's noon here, and I spent the whole morning writing, so it was quite nice.
Well, I didn't mean to interrupt you then.
Uh, I really enjoy talking about books as much as I enjoy writing them, so it's all good.
Um, so you write interactive fiction, and you put them into like
Hmm.
apps. So like, how's that work for anyone who's interested?
So let me show you a bit of a app in particular. Let me see if this one actually shows how it is done. I have a few videos, so why in particular this one? Uh, Long ago in ancient times, not that many, not that ancient, basically 5 years ago or something, I wanted to go traditional,
Mm.
with traditional publishing and so on. I'm sharing the screen if you want to show the game. I will
Oh,
show
okay.
how
Let
it
me.
actually works while I talk. So I generally don't write to market. So my working or attempt to actually go traditional didn't actually work. My partner
Oh,
is a video game developer, and we have been playing video games together since before we actually started dating. And he came in and told me, let's make a game together. You can write whatever you want. And we started brainstorming what we really wanted to get with these stories. And on the one hand, it's what I like to write, which is highly thematic work, right? All of my books are very allegorical. They have one story going on, but something else if you analyze them. Sometimes I generally talk on philosophy or mental health. Most of my stories have a lot of that. And it's sometimes not something very marketable. But the key point in these stories is that we wanted to maximize the utilization of the medium, right? So let me give you a more visual example. Have you ever played Tomb Raider, the new ones? No?
did you say Dungeons and Dragons?
Tomb Raider, the one with Lara Croft.
Oh,
Not
oh,
really.
Tomb Raider?
So
No, I haven't played those
no.
games.
So to give you an
I've certainly
example
heard
of
of
what
them.
I mean, yeah, to give you an example of what I mean of using the medium. In that game, in Tomb Raider, there is one scene in which Lara is going with the water up to her neck, right? And you have
Hmm.
to move through, and there is a whole story. But the camera is pointed in a way that the water covers you on the camera, right? And that is using the medium to actually make you feel the distress and the anxiety of a character as she goes through that piece, right? You can't really do that here because, as you can see on the video, it's not visual, but I can use the choices in a way that
So is
it
it
will
kind of
help, that it will change the engagement, right?
so is it kind of
So
like a
for
choose your own
example,
adventure book?
more or less, except that there is no character creation generally. They are all narrated in first person, most of them, and you just follow a character that is already created. So the choices that you get, on the one hand, they are already limited to that character's perspective, right? And what they think of the world. For example, in one of the stories, you follow a enchanted ballerina, which is on a she's a a ceramic figurine that is enchanted by magic and therefore she can move. When she wakes up at the start of the story, she doesn't know how to speak. So unless you choose the options to actively teach her how to speak, you can't. She won't talk. She will think or she will move, but she won't talk, right? And that's a difference. You can't really customize a character. You follow what you have here already, right? And then the other thing is also using those choices not only to direct what you can actually do in the story, but also to influence how you perceive things, basically. For example, in one of the stories, you have a robot that it is tied by a code of behavior, right? Because it's a robot. So unless the robot acquires knowledge, they can't infer something or an action path, right? So sometimes they will just have repeated options that are like visual aesthetic choices, and then the character will complain about them, right? Or when you have a character that is suffering from depression and so on, sometimes you have a choice, and when you take it, the character scratches the text and reverts the choice, because that's something that happens with depression, right? And the point of that, I'm giving you the choice, but I'm taking the choice away at the same time, is meant to generate frustration, right? And that is how I try to use everything, that whole medium of interactivity, to change the engagement, right? It is not just choose where you are going, choose what you say. It's also using something more behind, using the choices for something else, basically.
So what made you decide on this? Well, I mean, I'll just call them choose your own adventures to keep it simple, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's fine.
What did you...
We sometimes use books with choices.
All right. So. Either that or it's like playing an RPG video game.
Roughly, except, yeah, the only difference is that it's more similar to those books of that have go to page 14. If you want to go to this room, go to page 14 and you follow them.
Yeah.
But you are simply, yeah. So it's not RPG in the sense that you don't create your own character. Right? You have a character, you follow them, and that also limits what you can do, right? Because you have just a character.
So, what inspired you to do, to write those type of stories instead of, just, I don't want to say, novels in general. As opposed to novels.
That's part of a story that I mentioned. So I already wrote a few. I have several unpublished traditional novels, regular books without choices, you could say. But after I tried and failed at traditional, and my partner told me, let's do this. I actually started really enjoying the idea of interactivity, right? And there are stories that I wouldn't be able to tell if they were regular books, right? So to me, they are complementary. However, I haven't given up on actually writing regular books. I'm actually working on one right now. That thing that I was writing today was a normal book.
I mean, have you thought about doing like self-pub instead of
Yeah, I'm doing it. That one that the one that I'm actually writing right now, I'm hoping to get it published before July. So.
Oh, all right. Well,
quite soon.
Well, good luck with that. I guess I found you because you talk a lot about speculative fiction, and I am also quite fascinated by speculative fiction. So yeah, there we are there. So, like you said, I saw one of your books was described as a philosophical or one of your interactive stories was described as philosophical fantasy. So what would you describe that as?
Basically, as a story in which why they are doing things or why something happens is part of a plot, right? Or say a key element of the plot. That one in particular, let me backtrack a bit. Something I really like to play is with characters that have a different set of ethics or morals right, to humans. And that one in particular, it's about what is control at an individual level or a political level, what is bias, so how bias influences the decisions from an entire population and from an individual. And this particular character, with their weird set of morals, they have to, quote unquote, help or not a particular city because they are some sort of political advisor, right? So you have one line of the plot, you could say it's what happens with the city, but at the same time is what this character is actually thinking or learning as they do this. And both discussions converge into what is control at a political or individual level and what is bias, right? And how they intertwine.
Yeah, I hear you. That's interesting.
Yeah, I find that generally very interesting. The other one that I could tell you is Restorers. That's the only sci-fi that I have written so far. And the whole philosophy of that is how knowledge enables choice. Right? If you know something, therefore you can make decisions about it. And because it's an interactive story, it's represented in a very obvious way, because if you choose options to learn, you then have more choices to actually infer new knowledge or to take more actions. The less you try to investigate, the fewer actions you get, the fewer options you get after, right? So there is an actual correlation in that case. That's what I'm using that story for. The other one that I got out recently, that I announced this week, is called Reflections. And that one, it's a bit more psychological as well, because it delves into what emotional language is from the point of view of one character. And that one is narrated in a different way. It has a literary aspect because it's one character is telling you the story, and you, the player, are the person interviewing or talking to the other, right? So it's on second person and first person at the same time, with two narrators, two POVs rather than one, right? But the whole point of it, it's to make you experience what lacking emotional language, so language and words to discuss emotions, can make, right? Or what are the consequences. So sometimes the story is very difficult to follow because the character doesn't really know how to explain it. They learn how to do it throughout the story. So when you finish a game, it actually remembers that you played it, and the next time you play, the story changes. And there are new pieces, and it will never be the same again because you have already learned the language that was missing, right?
Interesting.
It's very interesting. Yeah, that is the type of thing that I like to do with these stories. That's something that you can really do in a book.
Though.
Yeah.
Have you ever watched iWizard on YouTube? I don't know how much YouTube you watch, but have you ever watched iWizard on YouTube?
No, that channel I don't watch it. No.
Oh, I was about to say, I think you would like his YouTube channel. He talks a lot about philosophy and fantasy at the same time. Where
yeah, and that's what I like. That's what I like of a speculative fiction. It's that it's based on the premise that something isn't real, right? And because it isn't real, we can ponder outrageous things to enable a discussion that you couldn't really achieve on a fiction that is set in the real world with human characters in a particular country or age, right? So the versatility of fantasy and sci-fi to create those environments that let me actually explore different morals, different ethics, or different characters, that's what I really like on speculative fiction, right?
So I guess I'll ask this: like, what are some of your favorite speculative fiction? And I mean, it could be anything, like books or, I mean, I don't know what you consume.
My top favorite, I think I already told you, it's Fahrenheit 451. I just love that book from Ray Bradbury. I think first of all, it discusses a topic that I really like, which is knowledge in general, and how people end up. It also has it's so allegorical that it's almost timeless. Every age or every year that you read it, it gives you something new. I have read it like 6 times, each time at a different age, and they all gave me something different, right? That's what I like of that book in particular. I also really like from Orwell 1984 and Animal Farm. Last year, on December, I read Rejoice from Stephen Erickson, the same author of Malasan, completely different. It's a sci-fi, a thought experiment of a book. I thought it was amazing. It's about, I have a whole podcast about it. It's about violence and conflict as the identity of humanity, right? And it makes a very interesting it allows for a very interesting conversation, especially because of how it shows the plot through different points of view of different humans. One that you may not have read is World War Z.
World War Z?
Yeah.
I've heard.
Exactly.
I know of it. Yeah, I know what the story is.
If you saw the movie, forget the movie. It doesn't exist. It's completely different to the book.
Yeah,
the book is an epistolary.
More like vignettes, aren't they?
It's an epistolary format in which you have one character that is interviewing different people. Every chapter is a different person. The zombies are a MacGuffin. The whole point of the book is to discuss politics and how this external factor brings in the worst of people. So it's very political in nature, very philosophical. It goes from every country. Nobody's safe. It's very interesting. And it's extremely different from the movie. So if you watch the movie, forget about it. It's very different.
Yeah, I did see the movie a few years ago.
Yeah, sci-fi. I really the first actually speculative fiction that I read was Dune, and I was 11 years old. So
it was what?
Dune.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it was quite a lot. I actually read it translated because I'm a native Spanish speaker. So the first time I read it, it was Spanish translation. Space Odyssey, love it. The 4 books, they are all amazing.
2001: A Space Odyssey?
Yeah, but the 4 books, so 2001, 2010, 2062, I think, and 3001. So the whole quartet, I love all
I have
of them.
only seen the film, alas. I love the film, though.
Yeah, the film is very interesting, but I think that the music is top-notch. But it doesn't fully convey everything that is on the book, right? They try to do it with the imagery and with the music. You need to read the book as well to get the idea. My top sci-fi series of all time is Halo from the video games.
Yeah,
so it's 30 books. Yeah, 30 books, all the games, and you have to read and play in between. I think it's the most complex world in sci-fi that I have read. Just love it.
I really enjoy Halo Reach the best out of all those games.
Yeah. I really like Halo Wars from the games. Halo Wars 1 and 2, I think they are the best story, but the books are honestly amazing because on the games you generally follow just the Master Chief. In the books you find all the other characters, all the other intertwining stories. It's very morally gray and it's very different, so it's very interesting. And I was reading this as of late.
Oh. Yeah, I played a little bit of that game, and then I'm like, what even is this? And I had to put it up. I'm like, I can't do this. I didn't have the patience for it.
That's a common reaction, yeah.
It wasn't for me, we'll say.
Yeah, it's also very philosophical. The books in particular make a very thorough discussion on human connection and what it means to be connected at different levels. It's very interesting, and it adds a lot of depth to the games as well.
Oh, well, that's nice.
Yeah.
Well, what other games do you enjoy? I mean, I also play video. I don't play them as much anymore. I've been really bad at. I did start Disco Elysium a little while ago, but I haven't been playing it recently because I've been busy with other things.
Yeah, yeah. I generally enjoy more the games that are story based. You know?
Same, yeah.
Yeah. So Dragon Age Origins, I think I clocked 400 hours on that one.
I've heard that game is really good.
It's very good. It's grimdark at its best, honestly. And the expansion, Dragon Age Awakenings, that's also very good. After that, then Dragon Age 2 is good. Inquisition just went downhill from there.
Oh,
Don't
I've heard a
touch.
lot of people say
Mass
Dragon Age
Effect,
2
yeah.
is bad.
Dragon Age 2, it's not the best. It shows a lower budget, but the story to me was still very good. The difference is that in the first game, in Origins, they focus on some warriors that are called Grey Wardens, and they were the center of the story, and then they just took them out of the picture, forgot them, and moved the story somewhere else, and it's boring. So that's the point. Mass Effect, the original trilogy.
I did play those. I really enjoyed all 3 games. I didn't think
They're
the ending
amazing.
was as bad as people were saying it was, but I don't know.
I really like the ending, but I always try to get the destroy ending. That's the one that I like.
Yeah,
because you have 3 different endings.
Yeah, I enjoy Mass Effect games. I actually started replaying them as Female Shepherd. I need to get back to that because I was on 2, I think. Nice.
Jennifer Hale's voice is just incredible on there. I always play it as Female Shepherd. Like, there is nothing else. And let me say, okay, Portal 2 has a very nice story. The Principle of Talos.
I've heard of this game. I have not played that. Same thing.
It's another game that it's very philosophical. On the one hand, you are playing like a robot and you are solving puzzles, but there is a NPC called Elohim who is telling you not to go to the tower. And therefore you have the choice of agreeing, obeying, or disobeying, right? And that ensues a whole discussion on what is autonomy and what is independent thought as well. It's very interesting. The ending was mind-blowing to me. The ending on that game, especially if you play it with both paths, it's mind-blowing. Let me think. Did you ever heard of Doki Doki Literature Club?
I don't believe I have. Doesn't sound familiar.
So it's how is it called? It breaks the fourth wall very thoroughly, and it's considered a metaphysical game. It's a whole discussion on control of oneself and of other people. It's very, very interesting. It's done on what is curious on that one is that the whole aesthetic is, anime high school setting. It looks, so you start on a very silly game, like a romance game, and suddenly weird things start happening and it starts breaking the fourth wall, and it's very, very interesting. I think the whole aesthetic, the aesthetics they chose was to purposefully downplay the game, and the discussion that it will ensue. So my advice is if you ever play it, just be patient with it. You need to play a bit, play through it, follow up a bit, and then it will just unleash something wonderful. Undertale, I think it's amazing. It's an indie game.
I think I bought that game. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
but I've heard of it.
Undertale is amazing. So you can just you face different characters, right? And you can choose to solve the situation diplomatically, or you can choose to kill them. If you kill them, that's called the genocide run. And when you reset the game, it will remember that you actually did it, and it will start telling you, remember what you did, remember that you killed everyone. It's very interesting. That's just the tip of the iceberg. It has a lot of discussions. It's also very thoughtful in general. So it's quite a nice game. I think I told you most. Halo, of course. Halo, I'm just going to preach about it whenever I can.
I really love The Last of Us. I love that game.
Yeah. It's very good. And Until Dawn, that one.
I played that one a while back. I like Wendigos a lot. So, I don't know if it's as good as The Last of Us, but I like that game.
It's creepy. Beyond Two Souls was also very good.
And
yeah, that one has I will say that it's more a supernatural urban fantasy thing. It has it's a good story, but it's not as meaningful as others. And then there is this one. I'm not sure if I can remember the name. It's from an indie studio, and basically they used some. It's about mental health and in particular psychosis, and they used blended some of the symptoms with Norse mythology.
Oh yeah. I started playing that game. Hellblade.
Hellblade, yeah, I didn't get the name. Thank you. It's very good. Loved it.
I started playing that, and I put my headphones on. That was a really fascinating experience.
Yeah, the music is just, and the sound on that game, it's very, very immersive. It's incredible.
I need to.
Yeah.
There's a lot of games I need to finish from if you didn't gather that already.
Yeah, I also have quite a bit to finish as well. And then, of course, I like more silly games like Don't Starve and so on, but the story-based ones are my favorites.
Yeah, I also really enjoy Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2. I do like the GTA.
Haven't played them.
Grand Theft Auto. I'm a big fan of the fourth one. I think at least in terms of story, I think 4 is the best one.
No, I never played the GTAs. It's like they never caught me, basically.
I mean, yeah, it's not for everyone. It's definitely gotten its fair share of controversy, but I love the way that Rockstar, whoever writes the game, I love how they do dialogue, and
yeah,
I really love like this kind of cheeky, irreverent tone, but they're not afraid to go into the more darker territory, and the more
yeah.
Where you're kind of like, I remember one person described it as confronting the characters with their choices. I really like how they do that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Another game on that line is Deus Ex Human Revolution and Deus Ex Mankind Divided. They are very good as well, and it's cyberpunkish, and they make some interesting discussions in terms of class division, what is to be human or not, and the human nature. It's interesting to follow.
Also, System Shock 1 and 2, I really like those. They're pretty old, but I enjoy them a lot.
Yeah.
BioShock as well, I think one of the greatest twists.
BioShock is on my pending, my list of pendings.
Oh, I won't spoil much for you. That's a game that has to be played at least once. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Oh man, Soma. Have you ever played Soma?
Yes, I did. It's amazing.
That's another one. I love AI. That's one of my favorite science fiction tropes. So I was all over that.
Yeah.
Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, I really enjoy a lot.
The one by BioWare?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I play that. I actually played that one, I think, almost once with every class that you have. I like the Sith more. It was funnier.
And yeah, I played Halo. Reach is my favorite. I love the design of that game. Just how it looks and the gameplay and the music especially.
The music is very good. I don't like Reach in particular because it changes the ending of one of my favorite books in the series, which is Halo, The Fall of Reach. So I'd rather just remain with the original storyline rather than the one that the game rewrote. So
well, I haven't read any of the books, but I love Reach. It's fantastic. I think it's a fantastic game. Also, the original Halo.
You need to, you need to read the books. It's a completely different thing. It's I would say a chocolate box because some of them are more exploration, some are more military, some are strategic at ground level, and you get a lot of ships, flotillas going one against the other. Others are more skirmish-like, others are more political. You have a huge range of characters. For example, Dr. Halsey, it's a very important character within the books, and she basically touches everything. And has a lot of influence. Then you have Sergeant Johnson. He's the main character of one book in which the Spartans don't appear. So it's very different, and it actually shows you the span, how large the world is, and everything that is happening. You get a lot of books from the Covenant point of view, and yeah, it's
I like
great,
the original
honestly.
3 games as well.
Yeah, they are also very good.
I haven't played I did play 4, and I
And
was
5.
I was pretty meh on that one. I haven't played any since. I haven't read any of the books though, because I tend to be really iffy with tie-in content. Though I do love the Star Wars, because I'm a big Star Wars fan. So what can I say?
Yeah.
But usually I don't do a lot of tie-ins.
They are not tie-ins. I think that they are more, setting the world. And there is one of the trilogies within the Halo that is written by Greg Bear, which was one of the all-time authors of sci-fi. So
Yeah, I actually have one of his books, The City at the End of Time, which I don't know when I'm going to read that, but I'll admit, I actually was talking about this the other day. I'll admit, I might have bought that book because I like the title.
Yeah.
I might have.
Sometimes some have a very nice title and sometimes they don't deliver. That happened to me with The Stars, My Destination.
Oh yeah,
It seemed nice.
That's one of those I've always wanted. I have it right over here. I cannot see it at the moment, but I've always wanted to read that one. I was going to read it a few years ago, but 2020 happened, and well,
didn't read it.
Yeah,
that one.
Also, I got really depressed.
Yeah,
it wasn't fun.
Yeah, sorry to hear that. It's not fun.
It was a massive reading. So it wasn't a fun time.
Yeah, I can imagine. So that one, The Stars, My Destination, I have the review and I was on a discussion on it. Big ideas, nice execution. It really didn't age well. So it's a book that perhaps when it came up, it was very good. But there are other books that have aged better.
What do you mean it hasn't aged well?
It describes one character with the N-word.
Yeah.
And and other things like that. And it's a speculative fiction. Are you going to tell me that the author couldn't speculate on a society that was different, right? There are other books that are a bit better in that regard, or that actually manage to imagine a society that is different. It does have some very interesting points in terms of the setting of the society. I don't want to spoil too much. That are very well done, but there are other things that are really didn't age well.
One of the things that kind of annoys me about, I'm talking about science fiction specifically. There's a lot of these far future, and there's no mention of Earth culture, and that's actually one of the things I really like about Mass Effect is that they're Shakespeare's still a thing. Because, Shakespeare's amazing, and he's probably going to last. He's lasted this long. I imagine he'll last long after we're gone.
Yeah, that's true. There is a lot of, or you have the opposite case, which
it's kind
is
of frustrating.
Everything...
You're just like, what? Did people just forget about, art? There's some that might be the point where it's like, look at these people. They're too focused on their technology.
Yeah, or you have the opposite case in which even the aliens have a culture that is very similar to the humans.
Yeah. That doesn't bug me so much, but I'm like, I don't know. What
I like the aliens to be aliens, to be very different, to play on the idea that they may have a completely different society. Babel 17 does a great job with that. There is a... sorry?
Oh, I was going to say the Samuel Delaney book. I've always wanted to read him. I don't know where to start, though. I've been told
read that one.
Hog,
it's
though.
So that one is a standalone. It's about language. That's the main point of it. And when it touches on a culture, they meet a different set of group of aliens, right, from a different culture. And they make a lot of points about how their language is highly influenced by their society, and their society by their biology and the world in which they live in. And it's great because they are not humans in a custom, they are actually different. So it's a very interesting read, and it's one book that probably you need to reread, not just once, 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, I read Embassy Town last year, and that covered a lot of similar topics. While I'm a big fan of China Mieville, I think his Baz Lag books are fantastic. I didn't.
Yeah, I saw several of your reviews.
I didn't take to Embassy Town for some reason. I think maybe I wasn't in the right headspace when I was reading it. I don't know, but I might read it again at some point. It seems like one of those I need to reread. We'll see.
Yeah, I haven't read that one yet. I may in the future.
Well, if you like Babel 17
generally collect
from the descriptions of it, I haven't read Babel 17, but I think you'll dig Embassy Town because it deals with a lot of similar topics, like how does language work, how does it affect culture, how language defines us, and there's a lot of discussions about that in science.
So that one, Babel 17, it actually makes a play on the strong Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, right? And yeah, there is a lot of researchers have demonstrated that it's actually not that, and that is why you have the weak Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. But the book, at the end of the day, it's just a thought experiment, and it makes some very good points because the key language that they are discussing in the book doesn't have the word I. So that generates a lot of consequences, right, that end up affecting the plot. I'm trying not to spoil too much.
It's like Anthem. I hear you.
It's very interesting. Just read it.
Have you read Anthem from Ayn Rand?
No.
Oh, I was about to say there's a similar idea, except it's about how like individualism is so like not a thing. They say we instead of I.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I won't get into the Ayn Rand rabbit hole here today, but if you do ever want to check it out, I'd probably suggest Anthem. It's her shortest book.
I will. I generally tend to collect those books for my podcast, because I do deep dives and all of that. So books like those that are more thematic in nature, I have a low TBR.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, have you read the Southern Reach books from Jeff Vandermeer?
Sorry, which one?
The Southern Reach books. Let me actually pull them out. These books right here: Annihilation.
I only read Annihilation.
Acceptance.
Yeah, I only read Annihilation a few years ago.
Oh, what'd you think of it?
I thought it was very interesting. I liked his way of writing. It was, how to say, quiet and immersive at the same time, and it did touch on some interesting points on, I don't know, especially with the main character. I am severely due a reread of those because it has been several years. So
I hear you.
And besides, I only read the first one, Annihilation. I didn't read the other one, so I have no idea how it continues. Don't spoil it.
Oh, I won't spoil it for you. No worries. Though I do think, in my humble opinion, that Jeff Vandermeer, I mean, I don't know how much modern science fiction you've read, but I would say he's my favorite. I could say he's the best, but there's probably going to be people who are going to get mad and be like, ramble, no, it's this guy. Yeah, I don't want to hear that.
That's fine. That's your opinion. It's fine. Modern sci-fi. Not much, really, except Rejoice, that I mentioned later. I tend to read for sci-fi older books. They're the ones that I like most. And besides, I like more hard sci-fi rather than I don't like a space opera.
You don't? Well, what appealed you to Mass Effect then?
The military aspect in general.
Oh, okay. Have you read like Starship Troopers?
No.
No? Oh, that's a good one.
I like the Halo, but the Halo books are heavily political in nature and military. So it's really not like the games. They are very political and they touch on a lot of religious aspects because of the Covenant. So yeah, it's not the space opera side of it that I like.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I don't read a lot of space opera. I mean, well, Star Wars, but I consider Star Wars more fantasy.
Yeah, and Star Wars is more military sci-fi to some point, and you have more political. It's not just the exploration and the epic, and that's it. It's Star Wars. In any case, it's very difficult to pinpoint. It's sci-fantasy. It wouldn't be just sci-fi either.
I mean, like, what are some of your favorite? I mean, I saw you commented on my video about fantasy the other day. What are some fantasy stuff you enjoy? Well, aside from Dragon Age Origins. I'll be right back real quick.
Can I say that I enjoy Dune on the fantasy side?
Yeah, I'd say it's sci-fantasy. Yeah. So, I mean...
Yeah, it's sci-fantasy, so it counts. That was that one was the first one. So, yeah, after Dune, I also like Rage of Dragons. Oh.
Sorry, I'm back. What were you saying?
That's fine. Yeah. So Rage of Dragons, I read it quite a while when it came up. I mixed feelings. It was an interesting take, and it has a very nice military aspect again. He really can write battles in general. What else? Fantasy. I haven't been reading that much fantasy that I have actually like. Oh yeah, a few. So the India scene generally has more books that I like for fantasy. Susanne Imaginario, she has a whole series that is called Timelessness, and it's based on mythology, cross pantheon, but actually it's in the future. So it's not a retelling of a myth. It's imagine that the gods existed and time continued to pass on. They are several thousand years in the future. Things are happening. It's very interesting. It's not a retelling. It's something else. Very, very cool. The one that I recently interviewed in my podcast, Renia, that's a very unusual book. It's extremely unusual. It's fantasy, it's grim, and I can't really compare it to anything. It's unapologetically different. There is another author, Bethany Garcia. She did a few, I can't recall the name of her series, but the novellas From the Ashes, From the Depths, they are very good. She has a way of writing, words that feel like lived in, like the characters are talking and you know that there is so much history behind it, than there are myths, there are songs, there are things. Very, very nice. It's also, it touches a lot on relationships of people, like that always seems to be like a guiding point on her stories. It's worth reading and her prose is very readable as well. So, but in general in fantasy, I tend to like more the indie books, traditional books. I haven't found anything recently published that I like. Generally, I think it's also because sometimes, I mentioned this on your other video on fantasy, that reviewers tend to describe fantasy books like tropes, and that really doesn't sell a book to me. So I need to wait until I find somebody that is selling me the book the way it appeals to me, right? and then I will actually go and read it. So it takes a while to get those books.
Yeah, I hear you. I actually just finished a indie book not too long ago. It was Dr. Philip Chase's The Way of Edan, which I thought
Oh,
was
I have it on my TBR for so long. Haven't read it yet.
it's very good. It's very good. You know, I was kind of nervous because I know Philip. I mean, I don't know if I would call us friends, but we are friendly, and most of the times we've talked, I've had a good time with it. I've had a good time talking with him. I like Philip a lot. He writes well. I think he writes well. It's very. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's not the most original thing I've read, but you know, it's how you do things versus what you're doing.
Yeah.
At least for me, anyway.
Yeah, that's interesting. I generally, yeah, there are some settings or things that sometimes don't appeal to me. There are settings that I think that fantasy tends to have a bigger reliance on that. That's what I tend to lean towards the indie scene of fantasy books.
I mean, you may enjoy. I know I mentioned Mieville already, but I think you may enjoy Perdido Street Station if you
Yeah, I have it on my
Scar.
TBR as well. I really haven't been able to read that one. One that I liked was Certain Dark Things from Silvia Moreno Garcia. It's
Oh, yeah, I've heard of
marketed
this.
as it's marketed as horror. To me, it seemed more like a grim, dark urban fantasy. It's
Isn't that the
about
one about the
vampires.
vampires?
Yeah, but it's very different. So it's not your usual vampire. It's also based on some Aztecs, Latino stuff that's very interesting. And yeah, it's a nice take on vampires. But I'm not sure why it was marketed as horror. It didn't seem to me to be horror, that book.
Yeah, I've been wanting to try Garcia for a while. I know a lot of people really like Mexican Gothic and.
Oh yeah, I haven't read those.
And what's some other book she's written?
The recent one, Velvet is a Night.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
also
Wait, you know,
she like Mieville, across genres and things, and yeah.
Yeah, no, I like writers who like to play with genre and don't just stick to one. I mean, you know, as much as I enjoy like a Joe Abercrombie or like a oh god,
I loved the first trilogy. I haven't moved forward yet because I wanted to read
same
other
here.
stuff. Otherwise, I will be
It's
stuck.
just kind of. I would be curious to see him do other things. Like I've been
Yeah,
curious to see what else he does. Heard he's doing a
I
new.
really, really, really like Glokta. I just love
He's
him.
my favorite
It's my
character too.
Yeah,
I'm so
same. It's my
basic.
favorite character.
I'm so
Yeah.
basic.
And
It's
one day I
disgusting.
was. Did you listen to the audiobook?
I have. Yeah, he's great. Stephen Pacey, he's
He's great.
fantastic.
One day I was just sitting on a waiting room, listening to the audiobook, and Glokta with his sarcasm, and I just started laughing, and then I was like, I'm sorry, because I was
Yeah,
laughing
Glockta
immediately.
will do that. It's you
Yeah.
know, it's interesting
And
how.
the narrator, Stephen Pacey, it's very good. The way he speaks, it really hears like if he's missing teeth. So,
Yeah, no, it's funny because like when I was talking about this with my friend Matt from Matt on Books the other day. I'm like, you know, I mean, I don't know how you read. Do you picture things when you read? Like, when you.
I think it depends on the writer. There are some writers that when I think back on the book, I remember what I imagined. Like Greg Bear does that to me. I imagine the scene, what I saw rather than what I was reading. Other people, I tend to, I don't know, hear the sounds or things like that. It depends on the author in general and how they write.
It's interesting. I mean, we were talking the other day about people who like don't visualize when they're reading, and I'm like, how does that work? Like, do you just see do you just read it and you're like, oh, that's what's going on, and you just turn the page? I don't. But anyway, it's interesting. There's I didn't imagine him with a lisp, but I imagined him having like a high voice.
Yeah, it could be. Not
Don't
sure.
don't know why. I think Pacey did a really good job, though, nonetheless.
Yeah. I'm not sure because I only listened to it on the audiobook, so it's not like I imagine the voice. I already heard it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I actually read the books, and like, I'm weird with audiobooks. I mean, I've said this before. I'm not against audiobooks. There's some I like, such as Stephen Pacey doing the First Law trilogy, but I just get distracted really easily. So yeah, I have a hard time with audiobooks. I don't have anything against them though. Like, you know,
I think it depends on the narrator. The narrator can really make or break an audiobook. You know, some are very good, some can break it. And then you have things like, for example, they will change the voices of the characters from one book on the series to another, which is very cumbersome. Or sometimes I have found audiobooks with a section that has a different equalization because I probably just fixed it or something, and it's very immersion breaking, you know. So there are other problems that may come up during the audiobooks. It depends on the narrator as well.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I'm thinking back to the Halo games, the original trilogy, because they had Michael Wincott as one of the priests in, I think it was Halo 2, the Covenant priest. They replaced him in the third one. I'm just like, man, I know what you mean. It's the immersion gets weird.
So, have you read Anne Smith Spark, Queen of Grimdark? Nope.
No. Oh, yeah, I've heard of her. I haven't read her though.
So the trilogy Empires of Dust is very cool. It's very dark and it can get repetitious at some points. The book, I listened to the audiobooks. They are narrated by Colin Mays, I think. There are two characters that they always have scenes together. They are both male, and book by book, the narrator swaps them. So the one who has, you know, the thinner voice versus a grumpy, grown-like voice, they swap them. In every book, it was just like, wait, no, this is not the same person. They swap. It's very annoying.
So there were two audiobook narrators? Interesting.
No, so the same narrator, but the problem is that for two characters, they pick one voice on each one, and in the next one, they just swap the voices.
Oh yeah, I hear you.
It's annoying, and it made me, because I wasn't reading. I wasn't doing immersion reading. I was just listening to it. It was confusing. You know, I got used to one voice, then it got changed, then it got changed again.
Yeah, so I can see how that's probably annoying, for sure.
Yeah.
I haven't listened to any of those. I think she did a collaboration with Michael Fletcher.
Yeah, I haven't read it. I haven't read it yet.
He did Beyond Redemption, which I thought was a really good book. I read that last year. I mean, you know, I actually just had a conversation about Grimdark not too long ago. A live stream I did with my friend Pim from Epic Tales about it. Even though that was kind of thrown together at the last minute, I'm quite proud of that conversation. Believe it or not, it's kind of funny how those work. But I liked it a lot. It was really interesting magic, really interesting take on magic, that book. And like, magic isn't something, I mean, I love fantasy and, you know, I like magic and stuff, but like, you know, I'm not really focused on like magic. Like, I mean, I don't really care about that, like, you know, magic systems and stuff like that. But I really liked how the magic worked, because it's based on, it's based on like mental illness. So basically, the crazier you are, the more powerful you are as a sorcerer. And he uses a lot of Germanic phrases. It's really interesting stuff. And it was also interesting because most if not all the characters in that story are just scum. You know, I mean, you think like Joe Abercrombie creates, you know, complicated characters. I mean, these are bad people. These are terrible individuals, but you understand them, and I thought that was really interesting. It takes a certain writer to do that well.
that's the point with the. Ah, let me rewind that. I'm not a reader that will read based on relatability on a character. I don't need the character to be similar to me to actually like them. I like books that can actually explain me why that particular character is thinking or doing things in a particular way. Yeah. And when I can find that, that's something I really like. Abercrombie does it very well. Like you can understand why Glock is acting that particular way. There are a lot of flashbacks. He thinks a lot what happened and mulls over the past. So that's something very nicely done in general.
Yeah, which it makes me curious how they would do, because a lot of what makes the first when they do a first law adaptation, I don't know when or if they're gonna do that, but I mean I know they're making a movie for Best Served Cold, but
Yeah, but that's a standalone, so I think they may be able to fit it. I'm not sure how they will
well,
fit the
I'm
trilogy
just
in a movie.
curious because like a lot of what makes those books work is the inner dialogue.
Yeah.
I mean, you can do narration just fine, but that would be kind of annoying after a while, at least for me. You have to, or at least you have to use it very
Hmm.
well. But I'm curious
Yeah.
how they would work around that.
Yeah, I have no idea. It's true. Sometimes the pieces with inner dialogue, those are the most difficult to convey in movies.
Yeah, I mean, there's people who do it well, like Martin Scorsese can do it very well. I mean, Taxi Driver, good. I mean, I don't know how many movies you watch, but um, I could nerd out here, but I don't want to get too deep into that. Um, who else? I mean, there's video games that do it too. I digress. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention. I don't know if you ever played any of the Telltale games before Telltale went under, but those games are fantastic.
The one, yeah, the first one with the wolf.
Yeah, The
I
Wolf Among
can't
Us. That's a
remember the
good one.
name. The Wolf Among Us. Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good one. I especially
it's very
love
nice.
The Walking Dead because I have a deep fondness for that franchise. I
No,
mean,
I haven't played The Walking Dead except World War Z. I really, yeah, don't resonate with zombies.
fair enough, but those games are phenomenal. I
Yeah,
love those games. Uh,
yeah, they are very different.
Um, uh, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, I was talking about First Law. Don't know how they would adapt those because again, a lot what makes those books work so well is the inner monologue.
Ah. Yeah, and besides, I think that there are some, for example, Logan's changes. They're maybe difficult because it's not like he changes visually except grinning and so on. It's more like how he thinks and how he acts. So that also will be very difficult. Without the thinking, you don't understand what's happening.
Oh, I see you talked to Joshua or Josh Walker. I actually talked to him a few
Yes,
weeks ago. His episode's actually going up
yes,
this
I have
upcoming
a.
Monday.
We did a discussion on his novella, on the themes
Mm.
on the novella, in particular on the philosophy that he used a bit of Plato's philosophy to set up the world of the Aeolians, and it was also about the main character and how she changes from the past to the future and how she grows and so on. Very interesting discussion.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. But I talked to him a few weeks ago, and again, as of the recording of this anyway, his episode's going up next Monday, this upcoming Monday. So yeah, that's
Now
cool. You
looking
got to
forward
talk
to
to him.
it.
Yeah, he's an
Yeah.
interesting guy. I mean, it was some of my favorite conversations I've had on this show, and like I had a stream for my 50th episode, and I was
Uh-huh.
kind of hoping someone would ask like, what are some of your favorite episodes, and I'm like, I really like the ones where I don't know what to expect, and I'm just completely surprised. Like that was one of those. So, Josh, if you
Yeah.
watch this, you did good.
His book is very good, actually.
I'll have to
I
check it
really,
out. It
really loved
sounded
it.
cool. I mean, is it the one about the animals in the tree? Because he was telling me about that.
Yeah, but the race of the animals they don't live on the tree. That's a different race. It's it's complicated. So you have four races, and yeah, they appear on the story, but are not the main characters on it. Sorry, don't want to spoil his book. Either just read it. It's nice. I have the whole discussion there as well.
I'll definitely check it out at some point. I mean, I don't know when I'm going to do that, but
it's a long episode, I think 40 minutes or something. So
you know how the TBR is. It's always expanding, ever growing. It's probably never going to stop. I'm probably going to die before I read all the books I want to read, and that makes me really sad. But it is what it is.
Unfortunately.
You only live once. So I mean, like, in terms of so are you more like into science fiction, or are you more like into fantasy? I would guess science fiction, because I see you talk a lot about science fiction, at least on your YouTube channel that I've seen so far.
Yeah, it's weird because I talk about a lot of science fiction on my podcast. I tend to read a lot of fantasy as well. I write more fantasy.
It's funny how that works.
Yeah.
Did you ever read the
thing with fantasy is... sorry.
Oh, sorry. Finish your thought, and then I'll ask you what I was going to ask you.
Yeah, that in general fantasy, I think I'm having more troubles to find what I like. So when I find something that I like, it's more like little treasure. Here it goes. So those, I think that I have less troubles going with sci-fi, and finding something there as well. And yeah, but there are a lot of fantasy books that I have liked. Those that I mentioned before, I'm not going to repeat them. Those were all very good in general.
I've been trying to read more indie books this year because, I read a lot of, I read mostly trad pub, and I've met some people who are self-pub authors, and they're pretty nice people. So I'm like, I'm going to check out some of their books.
You need to, especially because I think traditional publishing, at the end of the day, it's aimed to sell, and yeah, you can find amazing books there, but especially in fantasy, and this is completely my subjective opinion, they are more, always about the same things, or generally more similar to each other. Among indie published or self-published, you can find a wide variety of things because they are, as a rule, not right into market. So it's very different, and it's the chocolate box situation because sometimes you don't know what you're going to find.
So I'm guessing you watched my Fantasy in an Identity Crisis video.
I did.
Oh, wait.
And I left you a very large comment.
Oh, yes, that's right. You actually left a comment on that video.
A large one.
I don't think I've responded to that one yet because I was like, man, that's a lot of information. But I mean, I will say what I remember from it. You had a lot of interesting things to say, and I do think that indie public. I mean, what I said in the video, and a lot of people were like, well, what about these people? I think indie publishing, or however you want to call it, self-pub, indie. I think it's helped with our... I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to bash Tolkien or Howard in that video. I respect both of those guys immensely. But, I mean, and I think their influence on the fantasy genre is going to be there. I mean, no matter what, it's always going to be there.
Yeah.
But I do think with like indie publishing, and then we see things like The Vor or Perdido Street Station or Black Leopard, Red Wolf. I think we're moving away from that a little bit. We're seeing more diverse stories and characters and concepts, at least from
definitely. And I think it's a case of double issue. So on the one hand, it's because traditionally published, they are big agencies. They need to sell the books. And a big point of selling the books is how you market them. And if they are too original, it's very difficult to know how to market them. Yeah, you could say, okay, China Mieville sells a lot of books, but he already has a name, right? If you say it's a Mieville book, you already know what you're expecting, right? Mm-hmm. Try to do that for a new author, and it's very difficult. And for the publishers, it's going to be very risky, right? So they generally don't publish that. And on the other side as well, it depends on what type of reader you are. If you are a reader who likes to read about a particular trope, let's say Dragon Rider, which is the one that is at the top right now.
What the
It's very
hell does
easy to
that...
find books.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but
You
what
know,
the hell does that even mean? Dragon Rider. That's a
I think it's
genre.
like,
That's not like a
yeah, it's
that's...
I think it's a subgenre. I'm not the best one to put it, but as I was saying, I think it's the type of reader that you are. For example, I'm generally a novelty reader. I don't like to read twice about the same thing. I like books to surprise me, right? So if I read something that is too similar to something that I already read, it has to bring too many new things in to engage me. I'm not saying that's good or bad. That I'm just saying that that's completely my opinion and how I experience books. So that's why self-published books tend to appeal more to me, because they bring something different. You know, that they are not the same formula being repeated as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's, I've certainly grown over the years. I mean, I started my fantasy journey. Well, I read the Magic Treehouse first, which, like, nobody brings that up. Everyone always brings up, like, Lord of the Rings. Like, no Magic Treehouse love. It kind of hurts me. But I digress. I did read Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, and I do love those series immensely. I really, but I'm like you though. I like to be challenged by a book. I like a book to take me by surprise.
Yeah, not only on the setting to me, but also for the characters. You know, I just want something different, and I want characters that are wildly different to myself as well, because I want to see the world how they see it. To me, books are a learning opportunity, or to see something different, and that's why fantasy and sci-fi or speculative fiction in general allows me to read. You know.
Well, I mean, you know, I don't want to go too hard on the Mayfield train, but you won't see anything else like Perdido Street Station or The Scar. So I mean, you know, I mean, there's influences, of course, but check them out. You'll probably dig that.
Yeah, I will.
Or The Vor. I really dug The Vor last year. That was really good.
Yeah, I saw your review as well, and I thought it was very, very interesting.
And I mean, you know, my favorite fantasy novel, at least right now, because I always aware it's susceptible to change. I don't know if it's going to change anytime soon. But anyways, my favorite fantasy novel is American Gods, and that's the most weird, offbeat, strange thing you'll ever read in your life. So
yes,
there you go.
I love that book. It's very interesting, and it also has, you know, a lot of implications and discussions regarding society's values and what they are and how they fit the gods and so on. So I also like that idea of that he's presenting beyond the story.
If you want to go back, I did a really, really bad review of it a long time ago before I kind of got my act together and started bullet pointing all my videos. I don't know how to review that book though. I've thought about getting Philip Chase on my channel because he's also a big admirer of American Gods. But my Laura from Fantasy Awash beat me to it, so I was kind of mad. I'm kind of mad she didn't invite me to that. But also, she got Philip Chase. I'm like, oh great, now they're gonna think I'm ripping her off. But I love that book. It's phenomenal.
It's very well done. Yeah.
I understand I understand how it could turn some people off, but I don't know. When I read it, I was 18 years old. I was in my senior year of high school. And I don't know what it was, but it's a magical book.
I'm not sure. I think I was
also
probably 28 when I read it. Yeah.
It's to quote my friend Jason, he was talking about Knock 'em Stiff when he said this, but American Gods, that is a magical book. I love it. I'm kind of nervous to read it. I don't know if the effect would be the same, but oh well. I love Neil Gaiman.
Probably you will see a bit more of the. It's one of those books that it becomes more when you read it.
And I mean, I won't pretend
it has a lot of nuance, and the more you read it, the more you get from it.
I mean, I won't pretend it was perfect when I first read it. I mean, some of the asides I didn't really care for, but like when he when he would go to like the taxi driver guy who I think is like a is it, I can't pronounce it, is
Jean,
Jin,
yeah.
or just stuff like that. Like, I mean, like I said, I won't pretend it's a perfect book, but it's a magical experience, or at least I certainly thought it was when I read it, and I think
Your
it
cat.
is. Oh, yeah, she's very indecisive. Yeah, yep, she's my cat.
Mine is just sleeping today. He tends to interrupt.
Yeah, no, but yeah, American Gods so far. Also, I also really
Yeah.
enjoy, like, I've actually been kind of going back into the Song of Ice and Fire rabbit hole because I love that series. I want to reread it.
Oh, I need to do a reread especially because when I read one book translated, the other one's in English, which was very messy doing that. And I only read them several years ago, so it's also on the pile to reread.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. That was another one that was a really formative experience for me because when the show was coming out, I was in about middle school, and it was really one of the first where I was like, wow, I didn't know fantasy could be written like that. I mean, not saying that the fantasy I read before didn't have great characters, but like I didn't know fantasy could do that. Be as unflinching as A Song of Ice and Fire can be.
In terms of fantasy, I'm such a fan of the Stormlight Archive, Brandon Sanderson.
I've always been hesitant to read Brandon Sanderson.
I actually haven't read anything else. I just read the Stormlight Archive, and so the 4 main books and the 2 novellas. I haven't read the last one that came up with the, how is it called, the Secret Projects. I think there was one that was tied into the Cosmere. I haven't read that one. Just the Stormlight Archive and books, the main novels and the novellas. It's very good.
Yeah,
they are very, very complex characters, deep characters. Granted, he has like 500,000 words per book, so you have enough space to actually develop all the characters.
That dude's a machine.
Yeah, but the stories are amazing. They are all very different. They are all very in-depth. And I really like that I could find female characters that were not just the usual tropes or male trope inverted, done in a female character. They are original, different characters that pop out of the pages. Sorry, I'm going to just preach about it.
I feel bad I feel like I don't have like the street cred as a fantasy fan because I haven't read an author. I've written a fantasy novel. I haven't published it yet. But I feel my street cred's got damaged because I haven't read Brandon Sanderson yet. But I've thought about trying.
I was told that. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, I was told several times that you need to read some of the other to understand like some complex or overarching things going on within the Stormlight Archive. I read it. I'm quite sure that I missed part of it. I loved it anyways.
Well, so. I mean, also I've listened to him talk, and I should note I don't have anything against the guy. Seems like a nice dude, very smart guy too. I like his YouTube channel.
Yeah.
But
I really like he has done a lot for other fantasy writers. Like when he did that big Kickstarter, they started with the extra money. They started backing other projects. He does a yearly donation with the Lightweaver Foundation and some Christmas baubles that they do and so on. So there is a lot more going on. It's one of those writers that for now I will just easily give my money to. I don't have the figurines that I need to paint.
I don't like his views on magic. I'll put it that way. I'll just keep it at that.
You mean the hard magic systems?
Yeah, I don't like those because it just makes magic into a type of science, and I don't really like that.
I think it depends on how it's done. I think he does it very well. I have read other books based. I'm not going to name them, I read other books based on the same idea of hard magic system that I didn't like. In the Stormlight Archive, it's hard. You can see where the rules comes from. It's not that prescriptive, and yeah. I don't want to spoil you, but there are some interesting things that they can do as they discover the magic system as well, which is a nice smaller plot line throughout the story.
Yeah, I heard in Mistborn the magic's based on like metals or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't read it. I haven't read Mistborn, so I can't tell you much about it.
I've just heard a lot of people go like, "His magic's great," and I'm like, I don't. Or well, you know, I'll read him someday. I'll leave it there. I'll read him someday.
You have to.
I know. I feel weird as a fantasy fan, and I haven't read Brandon Sanderson yet. A lot of people like that's one people are like, oh my gosh, you haven't read him yet? I'm like, nah, I haven't yet. I haven't felt the itch yet, you know? Like I haven't felt like, man, I'm gonna try out Brandon Sanderson.
I was going to say, like, have you read Gene Wolfe?
I've read one
Shadow
of his
of the
books.
Torturer.
I've read one of his books. The Land Across. Didn't care for it. But I read Black Leopard, Red Wolf a few years ago, which has jumped up to one of my favorite fantasy novels of all time. I've heard it's very similar to Wolf, and I'm like, okay, I love that book, so maybe I'll enjoy the Book of the New Sun. Because I've always wanted to try that one.
Yeah, that one is very interesting. I read the first two. I'm due a reread. I'm going to reread them as soon as I finish the one that I showed you today. The problem is that you have to be wary of the narrator. Wolf writes with a lot of extremely biased narrators, you know, and sometimes in the Book of the New Sun, at least to me, it doesn't seem that he's narrating facts, but he's narrating impressions of the facts, because it's been so many years, right, that the main character tries to recall and recalls his impressions rather than the actual facts. And that adds another layer of bias into the whole discussion within the books.
Yeah, I've heard like complaints that they like he's not very nice to women, and I'm all like, that's another gripe I have with a lot of reviewers. I find a lot of them confuse likable for compelling. You know?
Yeah, it's a very suitable comparison.
You don't have to be. Yes. You don't. I mean, my ethos is you don't have to be likable in order to be compelling. I mean,
exactly.
I mean, likable characters are great. You know, I mean, there's characters that you can kind of feel for. You know, but
for example, Glokta is not likable. It's extremely compelling. No. But he's very compelling. As a character, he's very compelling and easy to read, and yeah, not likable, extremely
also,
compelling.
Like, you don't have to be likable to be sympathetic either, I think.
Yeah, because you can understand where the character is coming from. You can still disagree with them.
Well, I mean, you know, or like Logan Ninefingers, like, oh, he seems like a nice guy. He seems like kind of like this dad figure, and then he turns into Bloody Nine. You're like, oh no, he's just murdering everyone.
But I must say, like in the second book, I think it's on the third one, I was just like, change. change, and that is it. Don't want to spoil it.
Because the only time I was rooting for him to turn into the Bloody Nine is when he fought the giant or whatever that was.
That one, yeah. I was just like, change.
Where I'm like, yeah, you might have to turn into Bloody Nine to to finish this guy off, because it kind of felt like a final boss fight in a video game.
Yes, it had that feeling, you know, of very final.
You know, it's funny. It's like Hellblade. You know, there's the like you have to fight those whatever it is in that game.
The shadow guys, yeah.
It kind of reminded me of that a little bit.
Yeah, I had something like that.
Though I mean, I really like Norse mythology anyway, so there you go.
It's, I think, the more engaging for me. I also like the Egyptian mythology. I'm not very good at neither. Like, I'm not a person that can actually go and speak on mythology for a lot of time, but
Well,
I really enjoy a story setting there.
Well, apparently, going again, popping back to Mieville. Apparently, also he was inspired by Egyptian because he like worked over there, I guess. It's weird. I would love to talk to Mieville at some point. If I ever had the chance, I would love to talk to him because he seems like a really interesting.
Go and
guy.
ask him. Go and ask him. Bring him to the channel.
Yeah, it would be like I'd have to like email his agent and be like, "Hi, I'm me. I run a YouTube channel. Could you ask Mr. Mieville to get back with me?"
Oh, I actually have. Like, I have a secret list of big authors or people that I would like to bring into my podcast. I'm just wishing for it to grow a bit before I can go and ask them.
Same here. Yeah, I just hit.
I'm just like, get more subscribers so I can go and invite them.
I just hit like 300 subscribers the other day. I'm like, oh, well, look at that.
That's nice. That's nice. Congrats.
Oh yeah, thank you. It was yeah, it was good. It was good. But yeah, I think that would be a fascinating chat. Yeah, I'm the same way. I have a list of like, if there were like big authors, I would love to talk to. Like there's some in my head I would love to speak to. That was funny. I did
manage to book an somewhat known author for my podcast coming soon, but still indie. Yeah, I'm just pushing the dates to get to the interview.
Yeah, one of my it's kind of interesting seeing some. I've also been like talking to indie authors recently on my podcast, so that's been fun. I talked with A.R. Witham. I really want to read The Legend of Blackjack from him because that sounds like something I would like. My friend. Well, we're also friends, but Joe Byrne. I actually am hoping to have Wistful Ascending, his book, right over there. I want to try that soon. Nice dude. I talked to Josh.
Yeah.
Who else have I talked to? I would like to talk to more. I mean, I did talk to Nick Horvath the other day, which was funny. It's kind of like you. You live in Australia, don't you?
Yes.
He lives in New Zealand, even though he's a Yankee like I am. For some reason, he ended up in New Zealand.
Because the Hobbit house is there. How are you not going to New Zealand?
That's true. I would love to see. I have also talked with another person from New Zealand, Derry. She was great. She's like, because it's kind of weird. I've always wanted to go to Australia to see the outback. Because I'll see it in the movies and be like, man, I mean, I don't want to get like stuck out there, but I would love to see what it looks like.
Well, if you go to Perth, I was told that there are places where you can visit where different movies were filmed, like the Mad Max movies. They were all filmed in Australia.
Oh yeah, that's right. Those are Australian films.
Because of the desert. Yep, because of the desert. So.
Yeah, I've always and she's like, "Oh, don't go there. Go to New Zealand. We got trees and in Hobbiton." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'd like to see Hobbiton." Yeah, I was that's I had some friends who saw Hobbiton very many years ago though. But yeah, they went down there, they saw it, and they said it was really good. It was great over there.
For what I know, there is a hotel and you can get the second breakfast.
Yeah, I mean, I've also been considering doing self-pub because I don't know, I'm still debating with myself about it.
Look, that's what I ended up going for self-published at the end. If you want to have control over your story, over how it is presented, then go self-published. You will have control over the people that you will reach, how it's going to be the artwork, audiobook, anything, if you do it. In traditional, it's like you can't control anything. So.
Yeah, but at the same time, I'm like, man, I would really love to see my book in a bookstore someday. But also, I don't want to like change stuff though, because like, a book I wrote is kind of weird, and I'm like, this seems like one like a self pub. It might make the rounds. Though again, I only have like a measly like 300 subscribers, so I don't know who would read it.
I will get the book. I will get it.
Yeah, you can get it, and then I can come on your show. I don't know how philosophical it is, but I mean, if I
As long as so, what I do with my podcast is basically I analyze themes within the stories. It doesn't have to be about philosophy. It has to be something ongoing. So, for example, with Yoshi's book, we discussed character growth. So, because it has two timelines, so you see the same character when they were a child and when they were older, right? So that's something that we discussed. Or, for example, on Babel 17, I discussed how language is used and some ideas that it put up there. It's not generally about philosophy. It's more about thinking the themes and what else is there beyond the story or how the story is used to present an idea,
That would be interesting, because that's like one of my things I was telling a friend of mine a while back. I'm like, I would want, one of the things I enjoy about reading is discussing the ideas and what the author was going for and all that. Like, I would love, like, that's one of my goals as a writer myself, is I want people to debate about why my characters did what they did, or, what the themes are.
Yes, exactly.
That's one of my, like,
So,
that's one of my, like, yeah, I want to do that, something like that.
That's also what interest is to me. Like, some people, will say, I want to write something like this or following this trope. I don't know, whatever. I generally, when I start a book, even the interactive ones or traditional books, not with choices, what I think first is the idea behind it. The thing that I want to discuss through the book, and the plot and the characters and everything else just goes around it as a medium to go through that specific point, right? So
yeah, but
I'm
leaning on self pub though, because like my fantasy novel is, well, I mean, I don't want to sound self-aggrandizing, go like it's like nothing you've seen before, but like I don't think a traditional publisher would take it. Like, I've thought about it, and I'm like, I don't know if they would take it. And I got all these friends on here. I have some people. I got some. I mean, I mean, I want people to review things honestly, but nonetheless, I have some friends on here who will at least read it. I don't know what they're gonna say about it, but they'll read it at least. So maybe, I don't know. But then I have a friend who's more on the like trad pub train, and she's like, "Oh, you'll be throwing your writing away," and I'm like, "Damn you! Stop making me. I want to just do it."
I think that some genres will be easier to put into traditional, others are not. Like, for example, romance. If you go with a very specific thing formulaic, it's just called traditional. For the indie romances, you will find something different. I'm not a reader on that. That's what I have been told. It's very easy to get as long as you follow the steps, right? For other genres, I think it depends, right? If your book is different and unique, I will say just go indie, because that's a big thing within self-published, that those books don't generally cater to market. If you go there, you will find something different. So the audience may already be more inclined to read it. And as of late, a lot of bookstagrammers, booktubers are including more and more indie. So that's a plus.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna have to work on it some more though, because I'm on like draft 2.5 right now. So yeah, so if
you will need to stop sometime. Stop drafting, go review it, publish it.
I might go through it one more time, maybe change some stuff, and then maybe put it. I don't know what I'm. Again, I'm still kind of debating with myself on what I'm gonna do.
You can get some beta readers and then decide.
Yeah, I mean, because, like, my god, it would be just a nightmare if I put the book up and then someone's like, this plot thread doesn't make sense. I'll just be like, oh,
Yeah, something
crap.
something that I can tell you, it's get a professional editor. They are expensive, but they are very worth it. Like developmental editors, they will help with that. So even for my interactive books, I use a developmental editor. So
Oh, I had a good friend of mine who his name's Josh. He's a good friend of mine who actually does edit like books and stuff. You know, kind of as a side gig, I guess. Um, but he looked over my book, and well, this was why when it was like first draft, I just stopped writing it, and he's just like, "Here's all the stuff to cut out. There you go." He's like, "You got something good here, but here's the stuff to cut out. Here's some other ideas, and you know whatever, you know." So that was very helpful.
yeah, so developmental editors, I think they are fundamental. So
My dad gave me a hard time though because I spent $400 on that. He's like, was it worth it? And I'm like, yeah, I think so. And he's like, all right, and why are all these spelling stuffs here? And I'm like, it's still we're still in the drafting, Dad. I gave it to my dad to read, and well, he liked it, so yeah. But he'll
that's
hear me
cool.
later and be like, what were you talking about? Yeah, I need to go over it again. I might actually start working on the sequel of that because I started work on a Western novel, but I don't know if you've ever had this, but it wasn't really writer's block because I know where it's gonna go. It's just the motivation wasn't there, and when I try to force myself to write when I'm not feeling like it, I just feel like it's crap.
I'm not I'm a plotter. I can't write a short story without a plot. I need to have a very well defined plot, and I will follow that. If I don't have a plot, I don't know what to write. So if I have it, it's easy to write. The motivation is a problem, especially when I'm extremely tired. Like I have been popping up things, and I think exhaustion in general uh, dampens creativity. So
Yeah, I mean, I tried doing the like plotting it all out, but I just don't have the patience. I kind of
that's fine.
I
It's a
do.
different style for different writers.
There's a guy named James Wade who I've become friendly with, and he describes his style as plant sing. So it's kind of he does both plot and he also just kind of writes it out as he's going along. So that's kind of how I would describe how I write is because I need a like I
Yeah.
like writing the summaries of chapters and then I'll write it down because you know I just have to put it on the page. I don't.
I generally depend on what I'm writing at that particular moment, how I plot it. Like
Mm,
my plotting isn't the same for every story. Like the one that I'm writing now, it's a political fantasy. So I will write like the movements, the situation, everything first, a bit of the world building, the steps that I wanted to go, and then I will order that into chapters. Then even down a bit into dialogue and beats in particular, and so an onion, layers of details until I get to write it.
I mean, you know, and also the first fantasy novel I've written. It's called The Plague of Nightmares. It's pretty short. It's like page count is 256. At least as of um my Google Docs, it's 256 pages. It's not very long. It doesn't have any dragons there are swords, but there's not really any dragons or swords or excuse me or anything like that. So
Mm.
yeah, I don't think a traditional
Yeah,
publisher would take it.
I don't fight. I generally write not grim dark, but dark or grim fantasy, and generally no dragons.
Yeah, no, same here. I like. I mean, I like darker stuff. So I mean, you know, I don't write. I
Yeah, I
don't
like.
call it grim dark because I don't like that term really. But um, dark fantasy would be a good way to describe it. And I know there's great dark fantasy that's, published, but like there's like flintlock guns and tomahawks and stuff, and I don't know if anyone would be interested in reading that.
Yeah, just put it out there. You will find your audience.
Yeah. I mean, there is also the thing, like, it'll be a lot of work, too, because then I'll have to find someone to do the artwork for it, and...
That can get very expensive. And some of the artists, sometimes you have to book them 6 months in advance or even more, because they take quite a lot, so it's difficult. I have done most of my covers except one, but yeah.
Yeah, I have some friends who've done graphic designing and they've done their own covers. I'm like, they're very fortunate. That's all I gotta say about that.
There are some I'm particularly proud of. So let me see if I have one to show you. That one I really like. So let me see.
You want me to? Oh.
Try it.
Oh.
Should be there.
Let me add it. There we go.
I really like that one.
Oh, look at that. Yeah, it looks like metal.
Dark. It's metal. So it's quite a political dark fantasy with a lot of fire and things going on. So it suits.
Looks really like metal, probably because it is.
Yes.
Yeah. There you go. I mean, it's kind of funny. Your chair, it kind of looks like you're wearing cat ears. A little bit.
Yeah. I actually wrote, now that you mention that, I wrote one cozy story about my cat. I generally tend to write about non-human characters. Like I wrote some alchemists that are not really human. That one about the cat, I just needed something more light, to just push the darkness away for a bit. The enchanted ballerina that I mentioned, she's a statuette and so on. That one I have there. So I actually got an artist. It's done on graphite, and then I printed it on this one.
Oh.
But not sure if you can actually see it very nice.
Yeah, I can see it fine. Yeah, it's a little ballet.
Yeah.
Is that an android?
It's very interesting. No, she's in the story. There is an elven family that they have different shelves, and in the shelves there are statuettes, dolls, and things like that, and they are all enchanted with magic, and they are all alive.
Yeah. Okay.
And that one in particular is a story about depression. So the ballerina is made of ceramic. When she gets cracked, she still dances. And the more things that happen, the more she shatters, right? So the cracks and the fissures are an allegory for what she's suffering and how she begins to realize that the only thing she has done throughout her quote-unquote life is to just dance. So she doesn't have anything outside of her job, right? So it's a short story. It's a novella, 40-something, and hope you can read it.
I mean, don't you have them as like apps? Do you have to pay for them?
No, they're free. Within the app, they are all free. The app is free. You can install it, no cost, and most of the stories are free.
Oh, okay. I'll have to check one out at some point. I don't know, as I like to say, I don't know when I'm going to do it, but I'll do it at some point.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
I guess I wanted to ask you this as well. Why do you like writing about mental health so much? I mean, which is sort of an interest for me as well. Because I mean, I have some things I deal with. as I mentioned earlier, I got really depressed in 2020, and I do struggle with depression, and I also struggle with anxiety. I don't really talk about it on this channel because, well, you know, it's kind of personal. But you mentioned it, so I'm going to mention it now.
So that story about the ballerina, that one in particular, it's about depression and it's about emotional abuse. The other one that I have coming in, it's about complex trauma and emotional abuse as well. I'm currently writing a character as well that went through some stuff. I think that people of any type can be a main character in fantasy. And I think that fantasy is, or in general, speculative fiction is a great medium to discuss some topics without being preachy or very explicit about it, right? And in particular, in that story, on the one about the ballerina, I'm using the metaphors of her shattering to actually show the impact of everything that happens to her, right? And yeah, I think that allows me to go more in depth into the stories. And also I write those topics because those are things that I want to discuss, right? I get the idea because I need to talk about it, right? Because it's part of me. And when I wrote that one, it was cathartic. You know, I finished a story and the problem was there. It was a story, you know, and
have you struggled with anything like that?
Quite a bit. Yeah, quite a bit, and that's also why I write about it.
Well, I mean,
it's my way of dealing with it.
Well, I mean, I didn't want to assume anything, but I mean, I didn't want to. I guessed maybe.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
But I wanted to make sure. Is my point I was trying to make.
Yeah, I don't always write about very specific or personal stuff, but I do write about things that interest me or that are somehow related to me. You could say that in some part.
Well, I think that's
every story has something of me.
I think that's
you could say that in some way they all have something about me. Like, I'm not going to tell you, for example, something different. I'm not going to tell you which story, not to spoil it, but there is one of the stories that I wrote that is actually a complaint about my former career path. And it's very allegorical until if you read the whole story, you won't find out. You need to read the author notes. So that's something that I generally do in the author notes. I explain why I was writing that particular story or where I was going with it or the specific topic that I wanted to discuss. Right?
Is that one of your interactive ones, or is that
Yeah, the interactive ones. And also in the interactive ones, I think that writing stories like that one, the one of the ballerina that's called Dance With Me, the fact that they are interactive, it makes it at least a safe approach for other people that may not have suffered. Sorry?
More personal, would you say?
More personal, but also suppose that somebody never suffered of depression or anything. The way that I'm using the choices and the engagement, my goal with it is to make the reader experience some of the problems that mental health may bring in a safer way, right? Like by removing the choice and trying to generate frustration, right? Or trying to immerse a person on the thought patterns that you may have at those specific points in life, right? And it's a type of the journey on that main character in particular, it gets very personal because you are making the choices, right? Because you as a reader are actually changing the story and actively choosing whether to heed somebody else's advice or not, right? And something else that I generally do, and this may be slightly spoilery, is that those stories always have a very positive outlook, right? I'm not going to end up in a grim way, right? So they generally have a positive outlook, something that it's positive for the character. I'm trying not to spoil too much. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I've noticed is I like doing the hero wins, but at a cost. I like those endings a lot.
Yeah, that one in particular, it's not about winning, it's about surviving, which is different. Surviving at a very personal level, because she's a ballerina not only, she's a doll, basically, tiny, dancing atop that music box. And the abuser is one of the elves that actually enchanted her. So there is a whole thing there that is also a power play, as you could say. Yeah, that's in generally what I write. The new one that is coming, Reflections, that's more of a person. It's a different take. You don't live through what happened. You play as the main character tries to reason through what happened, which is different. So the person is, you could say, trying to escape from his past, and the story helps you understand what happened. Right? It forces you to try to dig deeper on it as if it were a mystery.
Oh yeah, we were talking about Ray Bradbury earlier. Have you read The Martian Chronicles from him?
No.
Oh, it's one of my favorites from him. I like Fahrenheit 451, but I don't know. Martian Chronicle really hits. Also, like Something Wicked This Way Comes as well.
Oh, Something Wicked. It's very good.
Oh man, I love it.
I need to reread that, because that's a case of a story that I read, I don't know, 15 years ago, a decade ago, and I read a translation, so it's not the same. Sometimes when you read the translation and then you read the actual language in which they wrote it, it's very different.
Yeah, that must be interesting. You said earlier you're a Spanish speaker. How'd you end up in Australia?
Work. Work.
I'm like, I was gonna be like, do you have a partner over there? Are you teaching or?
Yeah, so my partner is the developer of the app.
Oh,
so,
very nice.
Yeah.
What do you do? Do you do like? Is writing the interactive stories your career, or do you do something else as a career?
No. I'm a software developer by trade.
Oh, okay. God, I've met so many software type people on
people, yeah. We had a lot.
I know. I mean, look at my channel. It's like my thumbnails are just what YouTube picks for me, and they always pick the stupidest looking ones. Oh my gosh. Seriously, let me find.
Yeah, that happens.
I don't know if, I mean, hold on. Oh, look at this one. Ooh, yeah, I'm doing the.
You should pick one. You should do thumbnails in that case.
I know. I mean, it's kind of hilarious because my family think I'm like tech savvy because I'm on the internet all the time, and I'm like, guys, I just use the internet. I don't know how to read. Like when my parents have like a problem with the internet, I'm like, I don't know how it works.
That's a classical problem.
Yeah, the generational problems. Are there books you're hoping to read soon on your podcast about? You said the SF Masterworks. Oh,
this one will come soon, probably. And I have a discussion on Wolf coming soon, but that's on Varsha's channel. We read The Fifth Head of Cerberus.
Oh, the Gene.
Very nice.
I know Tori infamously hated that book.
I really liked it. It's something you
Land Across though.
Rereading.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've read The Land Across from Gene Wolfe, but I read it and
No.
Oh man, I
like most of his writing, yeah. And I have I have a discussion coming in. Not sure when this is going to be out, but on the first week of April, I have a discussion on Borges, The Library of Babel, coming in, and group discussion.
That's Jorge Luis Borges.
Jorge Luis Borges, yeah. So that's The Library of Babel. It's one of his most famous stories. I think it's also classified as fantasy. It's a very weird fantasy. Generally, he writes, or he's considered to be one of the most influential slipstream magical realism authors. So
What do you think about magical realism as like a term? Do you think it's like a genre? Cause
I have no idea because
no,
I honestly have heard so many opposing definitions that I can, or contradicting definitions that I really can't pinpoint what it is. So can't answer that question, to be honest.
oh, I was about to say I don't really like that term. I find it's kind of it's kind of like graphic novels with comics. It's like a word they made
Mm,
up. So it's I just think of it as fantasy, but I'm sure there's again.
I will say it's a type of magic system, actually, to me, for what I gathered. I may be wrong in here. I'm not an expert on genders or so on. But in theory, magical realism is a magical system that is derived from something or supported by beliefs of the real world. So, like myths and things like that will then come in to form the magical system. That's what I understand. I have heard other definitions, so I'm really not sure.
I mean, I don't know. I've only what's well, I guess I've heard American Gods be called magic realism. I just call it
Yeah, I have that
fantasy,
as
but
well.
yeah, you know.
Urban fantasy?
What?
Urban fantasy. American Gods.
Yeah. Um I mean, there's like people like Salman Rushdie who I would like to read at some point. I haven't read him yet, but maybe someday.
Hmm. Yeah.
And have you ever read Kurt Vonnegut?
Sorry, who?
Kurt Vonnegut.
No.
He wrote Slaughterhouse Five and Harrison Bergeron. No,
No.
you may like Slaughterhouse Five. Talks a lot about trauma in that book.
Interesting.
Ah, yeah. There's so many books.
There are more books that one can read.
Exactly. Uh, I know it's crazy how it all works. What's another?
Yeah. Sorry,
Oh,
you were
sorry.
saying?
No, I was thinking to myself. Like, you said you're putting out something in the future. Would you like to tease it
Yes.
for
I
anyone?
have a I have a novella coming up soon, so let me rewind. I have two new books with choices coming in through the app. One is free, the other is, I think, inexpensive. It's only 149, and they are both themed around escaping. Then I have a novella coming in, actual novella coming in before July, and if I can make it, two more releases by the end of the year, so quite a bit. And my podcast is monthly, so I have monthly solo episode, generally one monthly discussion with people, generally one monthly author spotlight as well. So
Mm.
2 to 3 episodes per month.
So, are there any authors you're hoping to bring on your show soon?
Oh, I have two booked in, but I'm not saying the names. Not
Oh,
yet.
okay. All right. Fair enough. I also did Flowers for Algernon. I remember reading that when I was in school. I like that.
Loved it. Honestly, I read that book. That's one of the early episodes that I did for my podcast. It's one of the best books that I have read. It's heartbreaking. It's very difficult to read at some points because of what happens. And it's, yeah, perfect.
Yeah, it's a good one. I sometimes forget about that one when we talk about great science fiction.
Yeah.
I actually have a show called The State of Science Fiction on my channel. So
Oh, I will check it out.
the new episode of that will be coming out tomorrow. So, yeah. As of the recording of this
Cool.
anyway, it'll be coming out tomorrow. um Yeah, I mean, aside from that, I don't really know what else to talk about. Um, yeah, I mean,
That's fine.
are there other books you're hoping to read in the near future?
Let me see. I have, at least for my podcast, I have planned doing a wolf reread for the Book of the New Sun. Not sure how many episodes that's going to take. I was hoping to do 2 episodes. I have a few already recorded that they may come up in April and May. And I have 2 more of the sci-fi masterworks that I have planned to reread. Can't remember the names right now, but yeah, those are the ones that I have planned so far. Sometimes I'm more flexible for the podcast because if I read the book and I don't really feel like I want to discuss a topic within that book, then I will just read another, you know. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Ooh, yeah, I mean, I'm actually about to, hold on here, get ready. I'm about to read this little chunker right here.
Yeah.
Jonathan
That's
Strange and Mr. Norrell. I'm a little nervous. It's a big boy. I haven't read a lot of chunkers just yet, but maybe.
Yeah, that's something for the podcast. I generally tend to read shorter books because I can't fit them otherwise. It's just too much, or topics are too scattered, you know.
But yeah, it's about all I have for today. Livia, thank you so much for coming on and being so giving.
Thank you for inviting me. I really enjoyed it.
I mean, if you want to share any social media that you have or anything like that, feel free, as I like to do before the end of these.
Yeah, that's easy. So you can follow me on Twitter, Threads, and Instagram, and YouTube as Livia J. Elliot as well. You can, if you want, bite-sized discussions on books, themes, prose analysis, and so on. You can subscribe to my newsletter. The link is available on my website, liviajelliot.com. And yeah, that's all. My podcast is titled Books Undone. You can find it in YouTube and in every platform for podcasts out there. And you can read my interactive stories for free on the app that is called Unearthed Stories, which is free to download in Android and iOS. So,
is it on iPhones?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I might have to
It's
check it out.
iPhone, iPad, Android. You can read on the three of them.
Check them out, and I'll have some thoughts, and maybe I can bring you back on my channel and we can talk about it.
Yeah, I would love that. It's free, and most of the stories are free. I say most because we have 8 stories out there, and only 2 are paid stories. So 6 for free.
All right, then. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed this conversation. I know I definitely did. Livia, we should do this again at some point.
I would love that.
Maybe I'll get you on State of Science Fiction at some point. I think that would be a fun episode, but we'll see.
Yeah, most likely.
All right. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen.
Bye.